This is Adam again with Adam Goldberg Photography, and today I'll be discussing how to get your images ready for posting on social media, specifically Instagram. I'll walk you through my process so that your images are saved right for future use, and of course, get you lots of likes from your friends. Alright, so here we are in Lightroom, but before I talk about any editing and how to save your images, I want to just mention that I highly recommend shooting in RAW. What does RAW mean? It is the unprocessed image straight from your camera. Shooting in RAW instead of JPEG will give you lots more flexibility when you edit your photos. When you import RAW photos into Lightroom, the suffix will be something like DNG, CR2, or ARW, depending on the type of camera that you use. So you can see that I am working with a RAW image here. I have my CR2 as I shoot with Canon. And so let's briefly talk about some editing. Over here on the right hand side, you'll see your basics adjustment panel. And these are commonly referred to as global adjustments. And we call them global adjustments because they make changes to the entire image, not just portions or sections of the image. So the first one that I want to talk about here is your temperature. If you move it to the left, you'll make things cooler, and if you move it to the right, you'll make things warmer. If you double click on it, it'll take it back to what it was for the image initially before you started making any changes. Next, here's your exposure. If you move it to the left, it makes the whole image darker, and if you move it to the right, you'll make your whole image brighter. Again, if we double click, it brings it back to what the image was originally before you started making any changes. Next, let's talk about contrast. So contrast is a biggie with social media. Lots of landscape photographers like to increase their contrast by moving it to the right. If we move it to the left, which is common with travel photographers and bloggers, you'll notice that we start to see a little bit of a different color. And what this is doing is it's adjusting the difference between the light areas of the photos and the dark areas of the photos. So to the left means we're decreasing the difference between the dark areas and the light areas. Again, we'll double click and it brings it back to 0. You can also adjust the highlights of the photo. Again, to the left, decreases the highlights, and to the right, increases the highlights. Double click, brings it back to 0. Same thing with our shadows. To the left, it's going to make the shadows darker and bring it to the right. And we're going to make the shadows a little bit lighter. Again, we double click and it brings us back to 0. I'm going to skip down to present so we have clarity. Clarity is really important. It adds a little bit of texture to your image and sharpens things up. Again, if we add a little bit to it, you'll notice that we get things a little bit sharper. And if we move to the left, we start to get a little bit more of a dreamy feel or artsy, painterly feel to the photo. Again, if we double click, we bring everything back to 0. We also have vibrance. To the right, increases some of the vibrance, and to the left, we're going to decrease some of the vibrance. Double click, brings it back to 0. And last is our saturation. Just how saturated the colors look. And again, we can go left or right and either increase or decrease the saturation. And once again, I'll double click, and now we're back to the image the way it was before. One thing to think about when you're using these global adjustments in the basics panel is to not go too far either way. So let's make some quick adjustments to this image and see what we can do to get it ready for posting on Instagram. So we'll go -40 here on the contrast since this is a travel photo. I'll take the highlights and again, I'll decrease those as well. I'll bump my shadows up maybe just a little bit. And so what I've done here real quick is I've just brightened up the image a little bit, but I've also decreased the difference between the light parts of the image and the dark parts of the image. Now let's go to clarity. And again, I'll just make that 20. And I'll add a little bit of vibrance, say 15, and just a touch of saturation just to brighten up those colors. All right, so now let's take a look at this image versus what it was when I imported it first into Lightroom. And we can do that by using the \key. So there's our original image, and now here is our final image that I think is now ready to go. But there is one more thing to do before we save this and export it to Instagram. We'll need to crop it. Instagram gives us 3 options for posting on your main feed: 1:1, 2:3, which is your landscape, or 4:5, which is vertical. To crop your image, you're going to head to the right just above the Basics panel and find some dotted dashed lines. This is called the Crop Overlay button. The keyboard shortcut is R. Then look at your aspect, and it should say Original. The first drop-down is 1:1, so this is going to be for your square image in Instagram. If we go in here again, we'll see the option for 2:3, which would be for our landscape image if we wanted to keep it to its original aspect ratio. If you have a vertical image and you want to crop it and make sure it's correct for Instagram, again, you can click the 4:5 button. This should give you some good crops for Instagram and ensure that everything is the way that it needs to fit correctly. So we'll click the close button, as I think this one is good square. Okay, so now that we have our image cropped the way that we want, let's talk about saving the images and getting them ready for posting. The first thing we want to do is save our file as a TIFF. To do this, we go to File and then click Export. So now we have where we want to export the image to. So you can click a specific folder. I'm going to be exporting this to the desktop. You can rename the image if you want. And then if we scroll down just a little farther, we'll see this, which is File Settings. Image format, you can either save it original, which would keep it as a CR2. You can change it to a DNG, which would be a digital negative. Or in this case, we want to go with a TIFF. And basically what this is doing is this is giving us a lossless version of the file. What does lossless mean? Briefly, it means that if you go back and make changes or resave or export the image again, it won't be compressed and lose the data within the file and the image. You'll be able to use this TIFF file for saving any future versions that you want, if you want to make any changes to it or save it as a JPEG. If you were to save an image as a JPEG and then open it back up into Lightroom to resave it with a different name, you'll actually be compressing the image again and losing valuable quality and data within the image. This is why it is so important to save your image as a TIFF and then use that file for any future JPEG saving and sharing. You do not want to be sharing an image with a client that has been compressed 2, 3, 4, or even more times. Could be the difference between getting an assignment or not. All right, now that we have edited, cropped, and saved our JPEG, we are ready to post it on IG. As an iPhone user, I absolutely love AirDrop to move my files from my computer to my phone quickly and easily. So that is it. You now know how to properly crop and save your files for posting on Instagram, as well as use for future client needs. If you like this tutorial, please click like and also subscribe to my channel to get notified of future tutorials. Again, I'm Adam Goldberg from Adam Goldberg Photography, and thanks for watching.